What's up, you guys? Come on in. We're about to start another episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. You can also, when you go there, check out all the past episodes. We try to provide a lot of great content for you all about your health over at JimmyRants.com. We also have all the videos up on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you'll find the show, and then you can engage in the content that way. So yeah, that's what we do. And so we come on here, usually talk about things in the realm of health to help you in your healthy journey. And sometimes I've been talking about childhood trauma a little bit lately. Today and lately, all the news over the past week has been about this coronavirus and COVID-19, what it means for you. I am literally socially distancing myself right now. I am in my home in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I literally have not left the house a whole lot here lately, trying to do my part to stay safe myself and to prevent the spread to people that could be susceptible to this. So I hope you're staying safe out there, doing all the things to protect yourself and your loved ones. But yesterday, I did an entire Jimmy Rants episode. If you missed it, it's already up at YouTube and JimmyRants.com, all about the physical effects of going through a time of crisis. And so we are in that right now. We're definitely in a very abnormal time. Pretty much my whole life, I've never experienced anything like this before. The closest thing, as I said on the Jimmy Rants yesterday, to anything like this was the time right after 9/11. Just felt like we were in a blur. And it's just kind of this kind of uncertainty about what's going on. Well, that's where we are with this coronavirus pandemic, and people are wondering what's going to happen. So yesterday I talked about the physical effects. Definitely, if you missed that one, if you missed the one about the physical effects on your body of going through a crisis, go listen, go watch that one, JimmyRants.com or YouTube. Today I want to shift the gears to your mental health. And of course, this is the one thing that when you talk about going through a traumatic experience, a crisis event, an emergency, something that's outside the norm, everybody thinks it's only mental, which is why I started with the physical yesterday. But today I want to get to the mental. And I have a really great article, CERC, C-E-R-C, The Psychology of a Crisis. So a lot of really great information in here that I want to share with you. And I also want to give, as always, my own personal commentary on these things. So a crisis will always happen. Disasters are different from personal and family emergencies, not just because they're larger in scale. They take a toll on your human life, characterized by change, high levels of uncertainty, and complexity. In a crisis, affected people take in information, process that information, and then act on the information differently than they would when you're not in a crisis. People or groups can exaggerate their communication responses. They may be reverting to more basic or instinctive fight or flight reasoning. So, effective communication during a crisis is not an attempt at a mass mental therapy, nor is it a magic potion that will fix your problem. Nonetheless, to reduce this psychological impact of a crisis, the public should feel empowered to take actions that will reduce their risk of harm. You want to hear about this? It's good stuff. So we will briefly describe how people process information differently during a crisis, the mental state and behaviors that tend to emerge in a crisis, and how psychological effects are different in each phase of the crisis, and how to communicate best to reach people during these times of change. All right. So guys, this is good stuff. I hope you really take to heart what I'm sharing here today on Jimmy Rants. If you're just joining us, we talked about the physical effects on your body of being in a crisis time like we are with this coronavirus COVID-19 right now. So definitely go check out that past episode I did just yesterday, JimmyRants.com and YouTube. Today we're looking at the mental, okay? So there are 4 ways that people process information during a crisis, and see if you recognize yourself in any of these. Number 1, you simplify the message. So when you're under really intense stress and possible information overload, which a lot of us are right now, We tend to miss the nuances of health and safety messages. Here's what we do. We don't fully hear the information because our inability to juggle multiple facts during a crisis. Are you finding yourself overwhelmed by all the information? Are you feeling like, well, we're just getting barraged on every news outlet? How do you take it all in? And so what the brain does is it tries to cut to the chase, basically. It tries to overly simplify the message. So right now, perhaps your brain is telling you, okay, I'm hearing all this stuff, but what I'm hearing is coronavirus bad. Does that tell you the totality of what's going on? No. All you know is in your brain, you're trying to simplify it, coronavirus bad. And so it doesn't really help you in that aspect. You also don't remember as much as the information as you normally would. So you're relatively an intelligent person, but because you're in crisis about this, your brain can't assimilate that information, nor can it remember it. Now, I've got one of those memories that doesn't forget a lot of things. Like, I really vividly remember things. And so I'm not even exposing myself to the barrage of information about the coronavirus right now because I don't want to get overwhelmed. I don't want to have an impairment in my mental health and in my brain's ability to assimilate information and to act reasonably. You guys would notice it because you watch this show all the time. You know what I look like and what I sound like doing this show. Can you imagine if I'm like constantly watching all that coverage and then trying to come on here? You would noticeably see a difference. You also misinterpret confusing action messages. So maybe you hear one group of people say, oh, this is no big deal, don't worry about it, just do your due diligence. If you're relatively healthy, you'll be okay. That's one message that you might be hearing. Then you got other groups that say, oh, no, you need to quarantine yourself, you need to make sure you stay out of Dodge at least for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and so therefore that's what you need to do. So right there are two very conflicting messages, and the brain doesn't know what to do with that. And so when you're in a confusing time like that, to me, it's better to not overwhelm your senses with all of this message that's coming at you. So in order to cope, many of us may not attempt a logical and reasoned approach to decision making. Instead, we'll rely on habits and old practices that are already in your philosophy, basically. We might follow bad examples set by others. So maybe you're trying to hear all this stuff, and maybe you're one of those people that kind of is skeptical about how serious something is just in general. Well, guess what? Your brain is going to revert to that. So maybe you're not taking this coronavirus seriously at all because you're so overwhelmed. You're trying to simplify it. You're defaulting to your previously held beliefs of being skeptical about things. So just be aware of that's something you might be doing. And this is a mental effect that's happening to you as a direct result of this crisis. All right. Number 2, we hold on tightly to our current beliefs. So crisis communication sometimes requires asking people to do something that's counterintuitive, such as evacuating even when the weather looks calm. So for us, quarantining yourself, even though you're very healthy and you're not fearful of this thing. Changing your belief during a crisis can be difficult. Beliefs are often very strong and not easily altered. We tend not to seek advice that contradicts anything we already hold. So if you believe in your head right now that you're healthy and you're not worried about this thing, then that's how you're going to respond to this. And I know a lot of people believe that. Well, I'm healthy. I'll withstand this thing. I eat carnivore, keto. I take all these supplements. I stay healthy. And they're not thinking about the ramifications of this isn't just about them. It's about if you get this thing, you spreading it to someone who is susceptible. But so you see how you holding on to current beliefs can mess with that thinking. We also tend to exploit any conflicting or unclear messages about a subject by interpreting it as consistent with existing beliefs. That's called co-opting. So when someone says something, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I believe. When you don't believe it at all, but it helps you in your brain hold on to that current belief, even if it's something that's contradictory to what you do believe. Experts may recommend that you evacuate during an impending hurricane from an insecure location and then take shelter in a building that's stronger and safer. Although the action advised is actually for us to evacuate our house to seek a safer shelter, we can misinterpret it to match our beliefs. We might say, well, my home is strong and safe. I've always been secure here. When we left the last time the hurricane went north of us, I'll just stay here. So you might be hearing about this, quarantine yourself, isolate yourself socially, and you might think, well, I've never had to isolate myself socially. Like, well, why would I do that now? I've never been at risk. People have been sick out in the public, and I've never gotten sick. So maybe you holding on to that current belief of you can't possibly be harmed by this is keeping you from believing this. Faced with a new risk in an emergency, we may have to rely on experts with whom we have little or no experience. Often reputable experts disagree regarding the level of threat, risk, and appropriate advice. The tendency of experts to offer opposing views leaves many of us with an increased uncertainty and fear. That's exactly where we are right now. People are so uncertain, so fearful, so not knowing what the right thing to do is. Now, a lot of us are doing things that are outside of our comfort zone, like socially distancing ourselves, like washing our hands a lot more often than we typically would, wiping down counters with bleach, types of things to kill any possibility of spreading this thing. All of this may be outside of our realm of what we normally do. We may be more likely to take advice from a trusted source with which we're familiar, even if this source does not have emergency-related expertise and provides inaccurate information. That is a problem. There are a lot of people talking about the coronavirus and giving advice on dealing with it specifically. They don't have any business doing that. Now, what I've done here, I'm staying in my lane. My lane is teaching about health and physical effects on the body, and today mental health effects on the body. And you trust me. A lot of you guys watch this and you trust me, and I'm just trying to provide information to keep you calm and get through this, because so many people tend to be scared. But there are a lot of people out there that are pretending to be experts, and they have no expertise on this at all. I think my favorite response to this so far has been my friend Thomas DeLauer, who's in the keto space, and he must have been getting inundated with people asking for his advice on what to do with the coronavirus. He just flat out yesterday said, guys, I'm no expert on infectious diseases. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to stay in my lane. If you want to know about metabolic health and about keeping your body healthy and da-da-da-da-da, I'm your guy. I'll be happy to provide resources, but don't ask me about coronavirus. So same thing here. I don't know anything about infectious diseases, but I do know that you can control things about how you're reacting to this, and that is something I'm trying to communicate here on Jimmy Rants. All right, so we simplify message, we hold on to current beliefs. The third one, we look for information and opinions. So when we're going through a crisis, we process that information by going to websites, watching cable news, listening to what people have to say, maybe reading Facebook, maybe looking on Instagram, seeing what they're saying about this. And it does seem like everybody's saying something about it. I saw my friend Dr. Eric Madrid talk about this today, where he found a study that looked at elderberry. So maybe you're taking this as a supplement, elderberry as a supplement. And he said a lot of people take it for various reasons. And he said a study found that it lowers your immune system as part of the effects of taking it. And he was concerned that if people were taking elderberry and then get this coronavirus, COVID-19, that it could put them at a greater risk for dealing with more severe symptoms than if not. So his recommendation was to cut out the elderberry for now. Now, he is a medical doctor, a general practitioner, so he does have moxie in talking about this stuff. But that's the kind of thing, like, people are seeking out additional information and opinions. We remember what we see and tend to believe what we experience. So during a crisis, we want messages confirmed before we take any action. You may find that you or other individuals are likely to do the following. Change television channels to see if the same warning's being repeated elsewhere. Have you noticed that? If you're watching the news coverage, are you on CNN and then you flip over to Fox News and then you flip over to MSNBC? Are you looking around at what all the different ones are saying and seeing if there's a common theme? You might have been doing it subconsciously and not even realizing that's exactly what you've been doing. You might try to call friends and family, see if they've heard these exact same messages. So what you're looking for is confirmation of what you're hearing to either validate it or invalidate this new information that runs counter to what you believe, okay? You might turn to a known and credible local leader for advice. So maybe some local television personality, maybe a politician or government official in your area, start saying things that then confirm things you've heard. And then, of course, social media to see what everybody in your network of friends here on Facebook, here on Instagram, if you're watching the replay, here on YouTube, all of these try to confirm with additional information and opinions. In cases where an evacuation is recommended, we tend to watch to see if our neighbors are evacuating before we make a decision. And in this case, a lot of us are self-quarantining and socially distancing. I haven't seen hardly anybody in my neighborhood out and about. I saw the neighbor kids in the backyard and the across the street people. It seems like everybody's staying in their house, which is exactly what they've asked us to do, socially stay separated. Sorry, my cats are not socially separated. They just hissed at each other. Guys, calm it down. So this confirmation first, before we take action, is very common in a crisis. So have you noticed you're kind of like seeing what everybody else is saying and doing, and you don't want to take action until you see that other people are doing it. Finally, we believe the first message. This is what we do to process information during a crisis. You believe the very first thing you heard, whatever that was. So during a crisis, the speed of a response can be an important factor in reducing harm. In the absence of information, we may begin to speculate and fill in the blanks. This often leads to rumor. The first message to reach us may be the accepted message, even if more accurate information comes later. So maybe when you first heard this, you heard when you first came out, oh, this is no big deal, don't worry about it. We're safe. So then new information starts coming out, and guys, this story, the new information that comes out is just like blitzkrieg fast. Brand new information every day. We're hearing new stuff. So if what you heard was you're safe as the very first message, your brain has hardwired that as, okay, we're safe. Even though some of this new information's come out, you're still stuck in that original belief because that's the first message you got. This is how you're processing the information during a crisis. When new, perhaps more complete information becomes available, we compare it to the first message. And because of the way we process information while we're stressed, which a lot of people are, when communicating with someone facing a crisis, messages should be simple, credible, and then consistent. Speed is also very important when communicating an emergency. An effective message always needs to do the following. You got to repeat it. It's got to come from multiple credible sources. It needs to be specific to the emergency that's being experienced. And then it needs to offer a positive course of action that can be executed. So a lot of people have gotten the message. Wash your hands. Use hand sanitizer. Avoid social contact. Try to socially disconnect yourself. Try to stay relaxed. Don't let this overwhelm you. Those are the messages that I'm happy to hear are being repeated often enough. Now, some people, they're not hearing all those messages for whatever the reason. And it's because we all have these mental states when we're in a crisis. And that's what I want to talk about next. Next, it's the mental state in a crisis. People experience a wide range of emotions. Psychological barriers can interfere with cooperation and response from the public. Crisis communicators should expect certain patterns and understand that these can affect the communication. So here are some of the things that can make it really challenging with trying to communicate during a time of crisis. And the first one is obvious. It's the uncertainty of it all. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long we need to avoid social contact. We don't know how long sports are going to be off the television. We don't know how long we're going to have empty, barren shelves when you go to the grocery stores. Right now, it's cray-cray all around the world. And so that feeds into this uncertainty. Unfortunately, we have a lot more questions than answers in the midst of a crisis, especially in the beginning, which I would consider this past week is really the beginning of when it became a global phenomenon that needed to be paid attention to. Now, this has been out there since December, but this has been something very intense this past week, and it doesn't look like it's going to let up for at least a few more weeks, if not a few more months, and therein lies the uncertainty. At the time, the full magnitude of the crisis, the cause of the disaster, and the actions that people can take to protect themselves may be unclear, and it's this uncertainty that will challenge even the greatest communicator. So when you're in the midst of a crisis like we are, people don't know what to say and how to say it, and that's tough. And that starts to wear on you as the object of the communication. Mentally, it starts to wear you down. Maybe you're feeling more depressed. Maybe you're getting anxious. Maybe this has just taken over your life. And I'm really concerned for those people who are already susceptible to mental health issues. This is only exacerbating it. This is almost the equivalent of like a death in the family, the equivalent of just some major traumatic event in your life. And you need to know yourself right now. If you know you are in a very susceptible state to feeling the ramifications of a panic, feeling the ramifications of being overwhelmed, be kind to yourself right now, because mentally, you gotta get through this time. And I'm concerned when all this panic time is over, a few weeks from now, a few months from now, whatever it is, what are the lingering effects on your mental health if you don't deal with this in the moment? So I hope the mental health profession is ready, because I think they're going to get inundated with people that will need help in the midst of this. To reduce their anxiety, people seek out information to determine their opinions and confirm or disconfirm their beliefs. They may choose a familiar source of information over a less familiar source, regardless of the accuracy. They may discount information that is distressing or overwhelming. Yeah, you don't want to add to the stress you already have. Many communicators and leaders have been taught to offer sound, confident advice even when they're uncertain. While this may inspire trust, there is potential for overconfidence, which would backfire. It is important to remember that over-reassurance is not the goal. What you want people to do is be concerned, remain vigilant, and take all the necessary precautions. And we need to acknowledge that there's uncertainty. You know, I hate these people in these positions of power with health and politics and government who act like they have all the answers and act like everything's just certain. Oh, we've got this under control. It will not spread and da-da-da. And then it does. And you look the fool. And I think we need to acknowledge, look, this is unprecedented in world history. Never had something like this happen before, at least in modern world history. So here's how we're going to handle it. And we're not sure what's going on, but we just wanted you to be aware that action is being taken, and then we're going to see what happens with that action, but we're not real sure. That's the honest truth. And I think what they're saying here is acknowledging that is going to be important. Also express empathy to the uncertainty and share with this process that you're trying to get more information about it. It's a rapidly evolving situation. This will help people manage anxiety. When you say statements like, I can't tell you today what's causing people in our town to die so suddenly, but I can tell you what we're doing to find out. And here's the first step. You tell them. Say what you know, what you don't know, and then what process you are using to try to get those answers. Wouldn't that be great right now? I don't think we're getting that from all the people and the powers that be. which is why people are anxious, which is why people are fearful, which is why people are scared and don't know what to do. Although we hope for certain outcomes, we often cannot promise that they'll occur, instead offering a promise outside your absolute control, such as we will find the cure to this. Promise something you can be sure that response officials can do, such as we're going to do everything we can to find a cure for this and stop it from spreading and preventing it from causing further damage. Those are the kind of messages that we need to hear. And when you don't hear those, that uncertainty lingers. It causes you mental health issues. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani cautioned, promise only when you're positive. This rule sounds obvious that I wouldn't mention it unless I saw leaders breaking it regularly. We've seen a lot of leaders breaking it regularly. A danger early in a crisis, especially if you're responsible for fixing it, is to promise an outcome outside your control. Never promise, no matter how heartfelt, unless it's your absolute power to deliver. So we have certain government leaders who have made statements that unfortunately when they made them, they were trying to sound confident, but since they've made them, now we're realizing, oh crap, they should have given us better information, but they didn't. So what's another mental state in a crisis? The obvious ones: fear, anxiety, and dread. In a crisis, people in your community may feel fear, anxiety, confusion, and intense dread. As communicators, our job is to not make these feelings go away. Instead, you could acknowledge them in a statement of empathy, using a statement like, we've never faced anything like this before in our country, and it's frightening. Fear is an important psychological consideration in response to a threat. Bear in mind all of these aspects of fear and see if you notice any of this. In some cases, a perceived threat can motivate and help people take desired action. So the perceived threat is the coronavirus. You can pick it up if you get out in public. And so the perceived threat is that. Then they say quarantine yourself and socially isolate yourself. So if you have that perceived threat that you could get this thing if you get out in the community, then it helps people take action with confidence to stay home. See how that works? In other cases, the fear of the unknown or the fear of uncertainty might be the most debilitating of psychological responses. I don't know how your brain handles unknown and uncertainty, but for a lot of people, it just messes with them. Like their brain just goes, ugh, and they don't know how to handle it. And so look for certainty in the midst of that. When people are afraid, do not have adequate information, they may react in an inappropriate way to avoid the threat. So all these people buying up toilet paper and buying up hand sanitizer and bleach wipes and all this thing, that to an unnecessary level, that might be an inappropriate response to this. And it's unfortunate that panic makes people do crazy things, but we're all seeing it right now, just how panicked people are to the extreme of going to do crazy things. Yeah, it's crazy. Communicators can help by portraying an accurate assessment of the level of danger and providing action messages so that affected people don't feel helpless. So that fear, anxiety, and dread, that's another mental state in a crisis. What about the people who are hopeless and helpless? So avoiding this is difficult in a crisis. Hopelessness is the feeling that nothing can be done by anyone to make it better. People may accept that a threat is real, but that threat may loom so large they feel it's so hopeless. So there's some people right now, in their heads, they think this is going to get us all. We're all going to die from this. Oh my God. And because they hear the news, the barrage of news constantly. Somebody else died. Somebody else got it. Somebody famous got the COVID-19. Oh, another NBA player today, we found out, has the coronavirus. Oh no, we're all gonna get... And so you feel this feeling of hopelessness, and that messes with your brain. Like, let's don't pretend like these things aren't having an impact on people and how they feel. So be aware of that. Helplessness. It's the feeling that people have that they themselves have no power to improve the situation or protect themselves no matter what they do. If a person feels helpless, he or she may withdraw mentally and physically. You know the people in your friends and family circle who are most susceptible to being overwhelmed. Can you, as someone who loves them, surround them right now with support? Reassure them that things are okay, because we don't want them to be in this hopelessness, this helplessness, because this will break them. And again, it's going to be interesting after this is all over, how many people are going to need therapy to overcome some of the mental health challenges that this is bringing on people. According to psychological research, if community members let their feelings of fear, anxiety, confusion, and dread grow unchecked during a crisis, they will most likely begin to feel these feelings of hopeless and helpless. If this happens, community members will be less motivated and less able to take action that could help themselves. Instead of trying to eliminate the emotional response to a crisis, help community members manage these negative feelings by setting a course of action for them. Taking an action during a crisis can help restore control and will overcome these feelings of hopeless and helpless. Helping the public feel empowered and in control of at least some parts of their lives may also reduce fear. As much as possible, advise people to take actions that are constructive and directly relate to the crisis they're facing. These actions may be symbolic, such as putting up a flag, donating blood, creating a family check-in, so forth and so on. So, reassure people. You know the most vulnerable in your circle of friends, your sphere of influence. It's one reason I'm doing these Jimmy Rants, you guys, because I know a whole lot of you watch this show. And thank you for that, by the way. I know a lot of you have written to me and said, oh, I'm so glad somebody's talking about this, because you know how easy it would be for me to just sit on the sidelines and just let this thing happen. Well, I don't have any way to, talk about this, da 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 da. But I wanted to be here as someone that's a friendly, calm face that would offer this message. So I hope you're enjoying this and you're getting something out of this. Another mental state during a crisis is denial. This is a tough one, you guys. You totally refuse to acknowledge that there's any harm at all. And there's a lot of deniers right now. They don't want to know what's going on. They don't want this to even be on their radar screen, and they assume if they stick their head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist, then it goes away, and it doesn't go away. People may not have received enough information. That might be why they're denying. They may assume it's not as bad as it is because they've not heard the most recent warnings. They didn't understand what they were told or only heard part of it. So we can't assume everybody knows every little intricacy of this situation. They may have received messages about a threat but not received the action on how to respond to it. They may have received and understood the message but behave as if the danger is not as a big a deal as they thought. For example, people may get tired of being told that you have to hole yourself up in your home, and that makes them go out in the open, and then bam, they get it, they spread it, and it becomes worse. You see how this works? When people doubt a threat is real, they seek further confirmation. With some communities, this confirmation can involve a need to consult community leaders, the desire to first know how others are responding to this, and the possibility that the warning message of the threat is so far outside of their own experience that he or she simply can't make sense of it, and they just plain ignore it. Denial can, at least in part, be prevented or addressed if public leaders would offer clear, consistent communication from a trusted source. If your audience receives and understands this message from multiple sources, they will then start believing it. So a lot of people are denying this right now, and that's disappointing. That is a dangerous mode of thinking in your head right now. If you're denying that any of this is it's no big deal, I eat keto carnivore, I'll be okay. Well, it's not about that. You're denying the bigger picture here. The action steps that have been given for us to do, including all those things I mentioned earlier, are in place for a reason. And so we need to heed the warnings and wake up and realize this is not fake, this is real. So stop denying it. Panic. This is the one that as soon as all this started happening, I was just going, oh my God. Like, people are just going crazy, panicking about this. And I remember when I first started talking about this, somebody in Italy wrote on Facebook that, oh, well, if you lived here where our whole country is shut down, then you would be panicked too. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if panic's the right word. Yes, concerned. Yes, wow, this is unprecedented. Wow, we really need to take this seriously. But panic does nobody no good anytime. Panic leaves your body in a heavily sympathetic state, which leaves you highly stressed and is not good for you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Which is why I think panic would be a natural reaction, but it's not a healthy reaction. Responding cool, calm, and collected and understanding there's certain steps you need to do is a far greater response than panicking unnecessarily. People seldom act completely irrationally during a crisis. People absorb and act on information differently. This is due in part to that fight or flight mechanism we talked about. The natural drive to take action in response is sometimes referred to as fight or flight. Emergencies and crises create threats to our health and safety that can create severe anxiety, stress, and the need to get something done. Adrenaline, primary stress hormone, is activated in these threatening situations. It produces several responses, which we talked about the physical responses yesterday. One response it has us do is flee the threat. So if fleeing is not an option or if is exhausted as a strategy, a fight response is activated. You can't predict whether someone will choose fight or flight in a situation. So in this case, there's just so many ways people are reacting to this. Response officials may be concerned that people will collectively panic by disregarding all the instructions. This is highly unlikely to occur, but you have to be ready for it. And I know I've heard from many government officials that say, oh, we need to stay calm and da-da-da. The problem is they don't realize that they're the very ones that are causing people to not be calm, which I love this article, by the way, because it's teaching public officials when you're in the midst of a crisis how you communicate to the public. And I don't think many of them have done a very good job. If response officials describe survival behaviors as panic, they will alienate their audience. Almost no one believes they're panicking because people understand the rational thought process behind their action, even if it's hidden to their spectators. Officials need to acknowledge people's desire to protect themselves, redirect them to actions they can take, and then explain why the unwanted behavior could be harmful to them, like people still going out in the open and not worrying about touching surfaces that might have been touched by someone who has the COVID-19. Officials can appeal to people's sense of community, help them resist unwanted action, focus on individual protection. So what they could say is, well, we don't want you to go out, first because we want to protect you and your health, but we're also trying to protect your neighbor's health, the person you work with, the person at your church, whatever it is. And so that could be effective if you kind of hit people at a personal level. Oh, well, yeah, of course, I don't. But in the midst of it, the panic doesn't allow you to think that way. A lack of information or conflicting information from authorities will likely create heightened anxiety and emotional distress. If you start hedging or hiding the bad news, you increase the risk of a confused, angry, and uncooperative public. All right, this next one has been my biggest concern about this entire coronavirus COVID-19 issue. The media coverage and the potential psychological effects that come from it. Most of us tend to have strong psychological and emotional reactions to a crisis. If it's man-made or imposed on us, these types of crises also tend to have increased media exposure. The media will often show repeated negative images, such as how many people are dying. That one's getting me the most. I get it. You want to report deaths are happening. But do we really know? I mean, the same thing happened during the Iraq War, or during the war on terrorism when we went into Afghanistan. Oh, we've had 2,973 soldiers die since the beginning of the war. And it just seemed like this daily tally. And we're seeing the same thing with this coronavirus. Oh, well, we're now up to X number of deaths, da 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 da. Before I got on the air, I saw on the newswire on my phone, the 3rd confirmed death in New York State. And when you hear that kind of thing, I don't know how people don't respond in a negative way mentally. People who lack food and water. So maybe some people, they went to a store trying to get access to basic supplies and there's no supplies there. Which, by the way, if you need to eat some food, I hear all the vegan fake meat products nobody's buying them. So you can go look. I'm just kidding. Don't eat that crap. I'd rather you not starve, but fast than to eat those things. Animals that may have been abandoned, hurt, or covered in oil. That would be another kind of negative image that they show in media coverage. And then landscapes such as collapsed buildings, flooded homes, or oil floating on top of water. So maybe they're showing hospitals. Maybe they're showing tents set up outside of hospitals to triage the overwhelming number of patients. So these are all images that the media are putting out there under the guise that they're educating the public what's going on with this. And what they don't realize is they're psychologically affecting the people who are watching all of this coverage. Okay? Those who are indirectly affected by the crisis through media exposure may personalize the event and see themselves as a victim. So like, remember 9/11? There were so many people watching the coverage. In fact, they have a statistic here. Adults watched an average of 8 hours of television coverage. Children watched 3 hours. Several studies showed that the amount of time spent watching TV coverage of a crisis and the graphic content about it was associated with an increased PTSD risk, as well as an increased risk of clinical depression. And guys, that is what I'm trying to hedge off here. I know a lot of you guys are all caught up in this coverage of the coronavirus COVID-19. And it is going to overwhelm you if you're not careful. Whether you want to believe it or not, this incident, this coverage, what we're dealing with right now is a traumatic event in your life. Will not come without consequence. Will not come without you having to deal with the ramifications of what it's doing to your mental health. Okay? So maybe you're handling it well, and kudos to you, but there's a lot of people that ain't. They're not dealing with this good at all. This was even true for those far away from any danger areas. So I live in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We've had, I think, 2 cases of coronavirus locally. Just 2. A lot of areas have had 0. Now, you might live in like Seattle and some other parts of the country where this has been hit a little harder. And so it's very real to you. But even in your area, maybe nobody in your neighborhood has it yet. And so but you feel it because of the coverage saying, oh my gosh, da, 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 da. And so you feel like it's right here in your neighborhood. And that media coverage is doing that. Those who were directly affected by some incident and had television coverage about it had much higher rates of PTSD symptoms and depression than those who did not. So if you're one of those people who are just obsessively watching the coverage of all this, and you're already susceptible and maybe you're feeling the effects of this, anxiety, depression, panic, maybe it's time to cut it all off. Maybe it's not time to stop exposing yourself. And you have complete control over that. You don't have to turn on the television. You don't have to read the internet. You don't have to be exposed to this. And I've tried very hard on these Jimmy Rants not to tell you a whole lot of little stats and things about this because you're already hearing a bunch. What I'm trying to help you with is if you're watching that stuff and it's impacting you, then here's what you can do. Remember that even those people not directly affected by this may have substantial psychological effects. and we need to communicate using sound crisis and emergency risk communication principles. So people behave crazy in the midst of crisis, and we need to be aware of that too. And sometimes it's destructive. And so we need to be aware of that. I'm trying not to let this go on and on. Seeing if there's anything else good in here that I need to talk about. I think I got most of the parts I wanted to talk about. Oh, here's a good one. So harmful action that can be brought about by a crisis-related psychological issue. So in the midst of this, and even when it's all over, there will be harmful actions possibly that will be spurred on as a result of this. Without communication from a source that's trusted by an audience to lessen the psychological impact, negative emotion can lead to harmful behavior. These behaviors may affect the public's safety by slowing the speed, quality, and appropriateness of a crisis response. Crisis-related psychological issues may lead to a loss of life, health, safety, and property. So harmful actions can include the following: misallocating treatments based on demand rather than medical needs. So maybe sometimes people will abuse the system in some way. We don't know what that would look like, but somebody could think that they're having some kind of a physical response in their body, hit the ER when months from now, and it's just a psychological impact on their body. They're not realizing as the mind goes, so goes the body. And so they're thinking maybe they get chest pain or whatever, and they think they have a heart attack, and really what it is a panic attack. So we're misallocating the treatment. Accusations of providing preferential treatment and bias in providing aid. So perhaps, and there's been money allocated to dealing with this, perhaps that money is allocated to something else and it should have been this. You see how this could all cause problems. Creating and spreading dangerous rumors and damaging rumors and hoaxes directed at people or products. Oh, you've got to take this supplement, and we have the only supplement that's guaranteed to help you overcome the coronavirus. Will boost your immune. There's a lot of shysters out there right now, by the way, using this crisis as a way to push their supplement. If that's you, please stop. You need to be punched in the face. This is not the time to market. Offering unfounded predictions of greater devastation. So we might hear people say something along the lines of, oh, well, you think COVID-19 was bad. Just wait till the next one. The next one, we thought this was a pandemic. The next one, hundreds of thousands of people will die. Don't think that doesn't play on people's heads. Encouraging an unfair distrust of response organizations. So maybe in the midst of this, various organizations were telling you information and they didn't give, the total truth about information. And so next time they say something, you don't trust them. The government is the finest source of this. Think about government officials saying things and then something else counter to that happens. So then the next time they say something, you're not as willing to trust it. Attempting bribery for scarce or ration treatment and resources. Think about when we get on the other side of this. All those shelves that got wiped out. All that toilet paper people stocked up on. I'm tripping about the toilet paper. It's a respiratory issue, COVID-19. What are you doing with the toilet paper? I suppose you could blow your nose, but why not Kleenex? Why toilet paper, of all things? Anyway, that's an aside. Depending on special relationships to ensure considerations based on desire, not need. So people in a crisis tend to have more unexplained physical symptoms. Stress caused by a crisis situation can give you physical symptoms like headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches, and low-grade fever. In emergencies involving disease outbreaks, which is what we're in, these symptoms could confound the effort to identify people who actually need help. Potentially they have the COVID-19 versus the people that are just freaking themselves out so much that they're having symptoms that mimic that you have COVID-19. You see how this gets real complicated real fast. So what are positive ways that you respond following a crisis? Positive responses after a crisis. A lot of us are going to feel relief. thank God that's over. Thank God we can go back to normal. When can I see my sports again? Those kinds of things are going to start to happen. A sense of strength and empowerment. Oh, wow, we survived that. We're not there yet. We're probably at least a few weeks and very likely a few months from people feeling empowered and strengthened. A new understanding of risk, new resources and skills for dealing with risk, renewed sense of community and opportunity for growth and renewal. Think about after 9/11, how we all came together and how there was such patriotism and people rallied around and were very friendly towards their neighbors. I have a sense that's going to happen here. The confounding variable in this is it is a presidential election year. And so at some point, that's all going to pick back up again. And all that goodwill is just going to go out the window and people are going to be very partisan for, you know, whoever they're for. So what do you think about this, guys? Like, this is interesting. Like, I'm very concerned that people are going through the motions right now and not sure how to respond. And they're letting this become something in their life that maybe it doesn't need to become. And you control how you respond to situations. And of course, that's easier said than done. Some people don't know how to control their emotion or how to not panic, how to not have fears in the midst of all this. I'm trying to encourage you, figure it out. Figure out your personality, how you're going to respond to this, what it looks like for you, because in the end, COVID-19 coronavirus is not going to be around forever, but your body is, and your mental state is. And if you know you're falling into a bad place now, try to deal with it now, even now. Start to relax, start to do more kind of meditation, try to chill and do these things. Take this time of social isolation and use it to better your mental health. Because if we're not good upstairs, mass panic, mass chaos could ensue after this is all over. Don't think that just this intense time that we're dealing with the crisis itself is it. This could have ramifications well beyond 2020, maybe for a lot of you the rest of your life if you don't deal with this adequately. All right? All right, I'm almost out of time, but I do want to see a little bit of what you have to say. So I'm going to come to Instagram. And if we don't have time to come to you before we go off the air, I will come to you guys here on Facebook to see what you have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. Definitely, you guys go to JimmyRants.com if you missed any of the past episodes. Also on YouTube, make sure that you type in keyword Jimmy Rants. Okay. Bullock in 2018, strange day. It is a strange day. A lot of strange times right now. Hooked on keto, crazy out there right now. It's so crazy. Like, people are just nutso. Jess says, socially distancing here too. Schools closed for the next 3 weeks. Husband working from home. Supplies laid in. Just chilling. Yeah, chilling's the way to do it. I've been chilling too. I've been in my hot tub about 5 times today. Just relaxing and not really trying to get worked up. Bullock says, I go between this is government control and overreaction. I'm going to run out of toilet paper. I'm still tripping about people stocking up stockpiles of toilet paper. Ilza says, I have my own beliefs, but I respect and care for others. We're taking every precaution within reason. That's the way to do it. Jack says, I'm struggling with all this because I have a fear of over-sanitizing my environment. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of using hand sanitizer because I think the bacteria, some of the bacteria is good. It's like you don't want to kill the good stuff all in the name of trying to kill the bad stuff. Nancy says, in Virginia, our governor is a medical doctor. Our state is being very proactive about this. I think having a plan laid out is helping me cope with it better mentally. Yeah, it can. Mama 3 Chick says, our schools are shut down, but I still have to go to work, provide meals for any kids that come to get one. No idea how many may show up. Meanwhile, my kids are at home. 2Fix MJ, the unknown of the timing is very stressful, like a major snowstorm is when the snow melts. Yeah, very similar. Mama Three Chick says Sam's and Costco are way worse than Black Friday. Yeah, I went into Sam's super early the other day. I needed a printer and more ribeyes. And I went in there, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is like, I have a business membership there, they were already really full. Like, I usually go in there and I'm like one of one or two people in there. There was at least 50 people in there at that time of day. It was amazing. And half of them had masks on. Massive lines around the building several hours before they open. Some already bare shelves. Yeah. Beth says, listening on the bench, reinforcing a healthy microbiome keeps cutting out. Catch you on replay. Well, Beth, I hope you do watch it. Lavender says, thank you for this, Jimmy. It's about balance and being mindful. And that's all I'm trying to do here. I've gotten a lot of criticism, you guys, for talking about this. You need to just shut your mouth. You don't know anything about this. Okay, fine. Fair enough. I'm not an infectious disease expert, but I am a people expert. And I do know people are responding in a negative way. And if I can help assuage fears, then I'm doing my job. Kat says, at this point, it's clear you'll come in contact with it. It's just a matter of time, but it depends on how your body will react. Haven't had a flu or cold in 20 years, but always exposed to both. Keep your health in check. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Stores will be exploding from toilet paper, water. Know the insides of trucking. Huge market rise. Truckloads are on the way. Yes. Lone Star Keto Girl, husband's work, said they had to work from home until the end of the month. Wow. And see, I like a lot of the companies doing that. My Costco just had 2,000 plus people waiting outside before they opened. Bean Chef, 2,000 plus people? Like, if I ever saw 2,000 people waiting outside of a big box store, I think I would run for the hills. Linda says, you aren't talking like an infectious disease specialist, but as a level-headed person. Thank you. That's all I'm trying to do here is be level-headed. All right, let's come over to Facebook. I am going to run out of time probably while I'm talking to Facebook, so bear with me, Instagram. Hello, you guys. And I do see you there, Living La Vida Low Carb Facebook page. Thanks for being here as well. All right, let's see what you guys have. Anybody have something interesting to say besides hello? Kay says, I want to socially distance myself from others, but my job is in the state next to mine, so I have to commute. I would rather stay away from all the panic and isolate with my family. It's too bad your company does not recognize that right now. Mark says, but the same is true in the keto carnivore space. So many conflicting viewpoints. I think that's just human nature. Yeah, confliction in viewpoints, some people see as a negative. Well, if you have conflicting viewpoints, then who do you believe? What's true? What's not true? I think at the end of the day, you hear conflicting viewpoints. Which one sounds more reasonable? Who makes the better argument? And then you go with that. Chris says, I'm not sure how they think we're going to stay home and stop working. Yeah. Unfortunately, the world has to go on, and I worry, too, about the ramifications of all this. Norma says, my state, West Virginia, has had no cases. The rumor is it's because of RANTS pepperoni rolls and sauce and peppers. We'll ship them out to the rest of us then, Norma. All right. Guys, I hope this helped. I hope this was helpful. Like my one and only goal in coming on video with you guys is always encouragement and education and inspiration. Like, I want you to feel good about yourself mentally right now, because now more than ever, we need to stay chill. We need to stay calm. That unnecessary stress that you're putting yourself under, and it is totally unnecessary to stress yourself out to no end. If you unreasonably stress yourself out and you allow that stress to stay constant in your mind, you're going to have mental health effects, you're going to have physical health effects, and it's going to last super duper long after all this is over. COVID-19 coronavirus is only going to be here for a little bit, and on the other side of it, guys, you got to live your life. You got to be ready. You got to go on with life. Life doesn't just stop. Lavender says, chill energy or panic energy affects those around us. Exactly. So if my energy is chill and you're liking that, I'm glad I came on camera here today. Guys, go to jimmyrants.com, see all the past episodes. Go to YouTube, type in a keyword, search Jimmy Rants. You will find the show, and we'll be back again real soon with a brand new episode of Jimmy Rants. So, until next time, we'll see you then.